Welcome to the show. It is, what is it? It's September 19th, 2012.
Right. Red Dead Redemption is awesome.
We're closing in on the end of the world. I think by my calculation, we've got a handful of weeks left.
What calculations are you going with?
The one on my right hand.
You have a calendar on your right hand?
It's December 21st, 2012. World's going to end. So that means we've got roughly 5 shows left.
I feel like that's not a handful of weeks. That's more than a handful of weeks.
From between now and December?
A handful of weeks is like a month.
Okay.
Exactly.
So could we constitute it as a fistful? Perhaps maybe an armful?
No, 2 handfuls.
2.
I say a handful of shows left, but...
Yeah, a handful of shows yet. Yeah, that makes sense, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, we're closing in on the end of the world. With me today, I guess, is Mr. Aaron Robison.
Yay. Hello, everybody.
You said yay, too. It's a catchy thing. I've started a trend.
I was going to say, that was almost as lame as Jess's introduction from last...
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do it again. Hey.
Nailed it. Love it. We've also got Jess Clarkson, also known as Jessica Megan.
Abso-frickin-lutely.
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. I feel like we're in AA now. Hi, Jessica.
I know, it was
Eric.
my cookie addiction the other day.
And I'm addicted to poutine.
And cookies.
Would you say those other things
cookies.
that you eat are called beaver tails? Beaver
Beaver
claws.
tails.
Oh.
Bear claws are donuts, but I don't think we have bear claws in Canada. I think those are an American thing, but we have beaver tails.
Why do people overseas, or I guess I shouldn't say overseas.
Overseas, yeah.
People up there insist on creating stupid names for very simple everyday things.
Because we try to make them sound disgusting for Americans, so then they don't come up here and eat all of our food.
Yet all of you Canadians are coming down to our Costco's and Walmarts and flooding them.
We have Costco and Walmart up here.
Then why do you all come down to America?
Because Americans, it's cheap. You guys don't realize how cheap it is.
As long as you keep your poutine on that side of the border, we're okay.
Do you know how much cheaper alcohol is in America?
It's a lot cheaper.
I can buy a 60 or whatever you guys call them, a handle.
You guys use the metric system. Get out of here.
Okay, a handle
a 40
of Canadian Club. Oh, maybe no, then a bigger than a handle. The 1.75 liters.
Isn't a Canadian Club like club soda?
No, Canadian Club is whiskey, like Canadian whiskey, rye, and it's $20 in America. Up here, it's $60.
It's a good thing you live right by the border. Maybe that's why 90% of Canadians live within 2 hours of the border.
Yeah, because so we can go to duty free.
I just made that statistic up completely off the top of my head.
Actually, 90% of the Canadian population lives within a mile, like a mile of the U.S. border or something like that, 10 miles.
And
I was going to say a mile. That's
83% of statistics
that's a
are made
long,
up on the
thin
spot.
strip of
It was a
people.
Trivial Pursuit question once, and I got it wrong. But yeah, apparently most of the population is within the border of the United States.
All because they want to come down here and drink.
No, it's because there's nothing up north to do. It's just cold.
We have paint up north.
I'm going to stick with wanting to come across the border and buy cheap booze.
Yeah.
Well, that could be.
Oh, God.
Anyway, I think we're getting off topic again. Let's roll it back. Let's roll it back.
Story of our lives.
So I didn't get a chance to talk about this on the Manatang podcast this week, but I talked to Jessica about it, and I think she was sharing in my excitement a little bit. I had a celebrity encounter this weekend, and it was, oh boy, let me tell you what. It was one of those situations where you didn't realize it until somebody pointed it out to you, and you about crapped yourself. You never had one of those?
Was that the wedding?
It was. So one of my best friends from middle school got married this weekend out in California, and we got an invite. We were expecting it to be, your typical huge Californian wedding, but it turned out to be this really nice villa-type wedding, and there was maybe 150 people there, if that. So it was super ritzy. It was in like this old Spanish mission that was from the 1600s and really decked out. Something that you'd see on like a professional wedding planner show. But Christy and I went expecting to not know anybody, and we ended up running into a bunch of people she went to high school with and people that I knew through friends. And we were sitting there having dinner, and one of the guys was talking about the bridesmaids and how one of them he thought was in movies. So I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. So later in the night, we were talking to one of the bridesmaids. She was sitting down on one of the benches, and I asked her how she knew the bride and groom, and she said, oh, I know the bride. And then I asked her, I was like, so what do you do for a living? She says, oh, I'm an actress. And typically me, kind of like when somebody gives you that whole, hey, I'm a model, you're just like, yeah, whatever. Maybe it's just me, but when people say that, I just kind of completely disregard it because.
So you're a waitress. Okay, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're a waitress that wants to be a model. You've gotten a couple headshots taken. But so I asked her, I said, have you been in anything we might know? And she goes, well, if you guys watch some TV, you might know something. And just completely out of the blue, Christy goes, you know who you look like? You look like Alex Mack from that TV show on Nickelodeon back in the 90s. And she goes,
I loved it so bad.
Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, that was me. I'm sitting there, I've freaking lost my mind. I didn't physically lose my mind, but inside I was exploding because growing up I watched that show religiously, and I had a super crush on her.
What show is this?
The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Oh, I never watched that one. I'm sorry.
Well, she was
You're
also
a crazy person.
Yeah, she went on to.
Sorry, it's a little under my generation.
Did you see the movie 10 Things I Hate About You?
I did, yes.
She was Bianca in that.
She was Bianca.
The bratty little sister.
Yeah. Oh, she was in that was who you met?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that would have been sweet. She's in 100 Girls. Fantastic role she does in that.
She's also in Hawaii Five-0.
I can't remember her. She's got a weird name that's hard for me to remember. It's like Oleana or something like that.
Larissa Oleynik.
There it is. That's Oleynik. Yeah, Larissa. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I'm jealous now.
Yeah, so we sat there, and her boyfriend was there, and we all got hammered together, and it was a good time. Most people run into celebrities, and it's just kind of like this. Hey, this is awkward, and we got to party.
And I figured out how you can connect, the whole 6 degrees of separation.
How?
She plays Ken Cosgrove's wife in Mad Men, and he was in L.A. Noire, the actor that plays Ken Cosgrove in Mad Men.
Oh wow, yeah,
that just happened.
You lost me.
That's only 2, but that's okay.
What are we trying to connect
Less
here?
than 6.
Are we trying to connect her to Kevin
right
Bacon?
now to gaming. So then
I thought we were trying to connect her to Kevin Bacon.
No.
Oh,
no, I don't feel like going that far. I was being lazy.
Oh,
yeah, well, that's really cool, man. I'm officially jealous, and that's pretty awesome. I would ask her how Jonathan Tucker's doing, but.
I was more worried about learning how to limonate my beer from her hammered boyfriend. So it was a grand time. I don't remember much after leaving, but it's one of those encounters where it's like, hey, I didn't expect this to happen, and it turned out to be probably one of the best weddings ever.
That's pretty cool. Cool.
Other than that, so I was looking over some of the criticisms. Should we call them criticisms, or should we call them encouragements?
I'm going to call them encouragements.
Feedback.
Yeah, constructive criticism, maybe.
There was a lot of really good feedback about the show.
We're doing this for the fans, and the fans know what they want, so we need to give them what they want. So the only way to get that is if they tell us what they want. Yeah,
and the one thing that we got a lot of feedback on is people want to know what our definition of retro is. I know we touched on it a little bit, but I read a comment that was actually kind of insightful, and it was somebody who's probably, I guess, around my age, late 20s, and he said something to the effect of, for me, retro is always going to be Super Nintendo and earlier, because growing up, he really hit his stride with gaming, kind of in the PS1, PS2, so for him, older games like Super Nintendo and NES and Atari and stuff like that were considered retro, whereas kids now that are growing up with the PS3 and Xbox 360, their definition is a little bit more skewed. So for us, I guess, as gamers and what we want to talk about, what are we going to kind of classify as retro?
Well, I can say that I think each one of us is going to have a different opinion of retro based on the age difference that we have, probably. I'm in my early 30s, and retro to me is PS1. You know what I mean? So Super Nintendo, Nintendo are going to be the retro ones. When they switch to the disc format is kind of when I think that's not necessarily retro anymore. But knowing that that's almost 10 years old, that's I'm putting PS1 as retro. Up to that
PS1,
point.
PS1's almost 20 years old.
Almost 20 years old now. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I have to
came
put that.
out
But to
in
me, I don't consider that
Holy.
retro. I don't feel that old.
Yeah, it's scary. Just
it's
what do you
definitely-
consider retro?
In my personal preference, I agree with the pre-disc being retro, but no, I just learned that's 20 years old. I think that to have like an operational definition, it would be any system that is not currently the newest system, perhaps, would be considered retro if we want to extend it that far.
See, I was thinking something along those lines, but even a little bit more precise than that. I think gaming is still kind of in its. Actually, it's not really in its infancy anymore. It's
Right.
graduating to. It's about to graduate to another generation.
It's almost
And-
40 years old.
Yeah, and with that, our definitions need to move along with that as well. So I think what we used to consider retro, like Super Nintendo, clearly when it was PS2, Xbox era, retro was clearly Super Nintendo, NES, old Game Boy, Atari. But we're
64-bit, I think you could probably call that retro. Anything before, because then it went up to I think a 128.
yeah,
Now it's
Yeah.
all over. But I think 64-bit, anything 64-bit and less would be.
Well,
retro.
here's something to think about too, though, is that we're really late in the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii life cycle. I mean, they've been on the shelf for 7 years, and that puts the beginning of the previous generation over a decade ago.
Correct.
So, by
2000 was PS2.
yeah, 2000 was PS2. I
Wow.
think 2001 was Xbox.
Dreamcast. See, Dreamcast could also be considered. I think because Dreamcast is a retro system.
Dreamcast
almost now.
came
But
out-
That was a revolutionary system.
Yeah, and that's the classic
Time.
example of a system coming out way ahead of its time and falling victim to that because people just weren't ready for it.
Right, and the PS3 could do the same thing, but it just again weird controller setup, and Sega was only the maker, and certain
Yeah.
publishers couldn't make games for it. So
But I think in regard to the definition of what I consider retro, I kind of draw the line halfway through the life cycle of the PS2 and Xbox. Like I look at Final Fantasy 12, I don't consider that to be retro, but then I look at a game like the original Dark Cloud.
Well,
And
but I'm
to
thinking
me,
we should,
that's retro.
I think in 2003 and younger. You know what I mean? Like 2003 and back.
Yeah.
But probably about right that, because even when the Xbox 360 came out and the PS3, PS2 was still heavy in its prime. Same with a little bit with the Xbox, and then as soon as they took the Xbox away, then it kind of went more to the next gen here.
But then some people even
So-
come out and say, well, you technically can't have a system that's retro that you can still find in the stores new. I mean, for God's sakes, I was at a store the other day that was still selling new PS2s.
That's true.
But then again, it's the best-selling system of all time.
It is.
So I guess it comes down to a lot of it is personal definition. I mean, a lot of the kids that I teach, we talk about video games a lot, and for them, PS2 is ancient because they were, they weren't gaming then. So for them, and then imagine what they think about Super Nintendo and NES, and
Right.
for anybody out there that listens is in their early teens or their mid-teens, obviously for them, they have no functional memory of any of those systems.
Right,
So
and that's PS2's retro. You know what I mean? To them, that would be retro to them.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's going backwards. So I
Which-
think Jessica's right there. But if we had to define it, I would say I'd probably agree with Jessica that it's not the next gen systems.
yeah.
So
I mean, like I said before, there's that goofy little clump of games in the last year, maybe year and a half that were super advanced. Like if you go back and still look at them, for example, Rogue Galaxy for PS2,
Right.
one of my favorite RPGs, really, really fantastic game. If you go back and play it now, it still holds up. It still looks like a good game that, for all intents and purposes, looks like it could have been a recent Wii release. So I think to consider all of the PS2 and all of the Xbox retro, we're going to need to make the jump to the next system. And I think once we hit that, then the line will be very clearly drawn, like pre-PS3 and before.
Yeah.
okay. Yep,
That's my 2 cents on it.
I would agree with that. I think.
So I guess anything that we talk about on here, just to appease people so they know what's fair game, is that basically PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and before, Obviously, we're going to try to focus on like the really old stuff because that stuff holds quite a dear place in my heart. I don't know about you, but
Because we're really mature.
we are. So with that being said,
After our
right.
conversations about Canadian food and
Yeah. Booze.
we're very mature.
so yeah, those the things we're here to talk about, games. What'd you guys play this week? Retro games. What'd you play?
I got to be honest. I didn't have any time to play anything retro in the last 2 weeks. I've been a little preoccupied.
You're killing me.
I know, man. I've been trying to dig out my NES, hook it up to a TV, and I just have hook it up. I've been dying to play Faxanadu since you started playing it.
Loving it. Let me tell you about Faxanadu.
It's tricky.
That game like really caught me off guard. I was going into it fully expecting, okay, this is just going to be a really shitty side-scrolling adventure game that I'm going to turn off in 10 minutes, but I think I've got like 10 hours into it already.
It's very long. It's difficult, and it makes you think. It was if I remember, because like I told you, I found this notebook, the yellow legal pad that me and my grandfather made the maps and what the enemies were in that area, so we knew where everything was.
So you actually drew out the entire map of Faxanadu?
Not the entire map, but the certain areas were like, you would go up and then down. Here's where your cliff where you can get on, and like the outline, basically. You know what I mean?
What do you know what year that game came out?
Oh man, that came out in I want to say 87, maybe.
I'm gonna fact check. Oh my god, you got it right.
I like how we're Googling this.
You got it right. 87.
You guys are Googling. I'm just using my memory here.
That's that early 30s memory right there. Because I was trying to think of a game that it's comparable to. I think Faxanadu was quite forward-thinking in a lot of stuff that it did, and you can see a lot of the, I don't know if they're direct influences in modern gaming, but like it saw where gaming eventually was going to go, especially with the different inventory systems and the level grinding, especially. That's something that really caught me off guard, is that I was expecting it to be one of those games where you walk in, hey, go talk to the knight or the king, get your stuff, move on to the next city, but there comes times where you can't advance until you go back and just level grind for a little while, and you don't see that in a 2D side scroller.
And I remember because I played it maybe about 2 years ago. I finally hooked it up and played it for a little bit. I remember how mad I got because it was harder than I remembered.
Oh yeah,
but like you have the mantras, right? The mantras where you type. That was the code systems back then. You had to like type in this long memory code to get to that like level.
See, if you don't write it down, you're screwed.
You totally are.
And if you lose that little piece of paper, you're screwed.
Yep.
Okay, so hold on. When I die, that little box pops up and it says, "Don't have negative thoughts. Just remember your mantra."
Mm-hmm.
What like I'm like, okay, great. What mantra? And I never like
you
when
never
you
figured
go
out?
to the guru or whatever, the first guy, he says, "This is your
usually
mantra,"
Yeah.
and it's a bunch of like letters, and then you write that down.
Each level as you go has a guru that you can talk to who gives you the code.
And that saves your character, and it
saves your character. But here's the problem that I discovered. I remember having gold to buy stuff, but when you use a mantra, it puts you in that level. But I remembered now, you don't get to keep anything that you gained.
So you don't get to keep any of your items?
No, you start back at like 100 gold and like hardly any health, and you have to build yourself back up because it doesn't let you keep those items. I think as you get further on, it gives you them because it's like it is given to you in the game.
Yeah.
You can't not have them. But yeah, because I remember playing, and I think it was about 2 years ago, and I got so far, and then I put in the mantra, and I was like, where'd all my money go?
It's because it's all cartridge based, right? So that's how they had to do it.
Yeah, that's how they save.
Yeah, but a lot of games before that had built-in memory.
Like Final Fantasies, for example, you would save, and it saved your file, and it saved your gold, it saved your potions, it saved all that. Faxanadu didn't have that. It was literally the mantra, like Pilot Wings on the Super Nintendo.
Kind of like they had with Mega Man and the passcodes.
Yeah, the passcodes and like the punch out even, where you had to you could type in the code to get to that.
I don't know. I'm really pleasantly surprised with that game, especially for it being, how old it is. It's not your typical just run through and kill things. Like there's a lot of really quirky strategy to it, and it's super difficult if you don't take the time, because I'm one of those people that likes to just plow through games, and I think that's
Well,
kind of
okay, so you didn't have to ever put in a mantra, so that means that you spent 10 hours plowing through that game, correct?
No, we'll get to how I played it later.
Okay.
But it was pleasantly entertaining, because I think a product of modern gaming is, first of all, we've got autosaves, so we're far more careless. And
yes.
we just, oh, hey, I need to stop, so power off. Yeah, that's fantastic, but it doesn't really require you to take any, I guess, pride in what you're doing, and make sure that you remember, for this game, I guess, remember that mantra, and slow down and like actually learn the patterns of the enemies. And the patterns aren't difficult. It's like, hey, I'm a sperm looking frog, I'm gonna jump here and jump here, but they change their pattern and their different distances. And what pissed me off is you get into a room with like 3 or 4 different enemies, and you stab a couple of them and kill them, and then one of them knocks you back off the screen, and you come back in and they're all respawned
I
again.
hate that.
And then
And
also,
the fast little blue guys, I don't like
Yes.
yeah, and then also, if I remember I told last 2 weeks ago, they can move in more than one direction.
them. Yeah.
Like you're stuck to side up and down and left to right. They can go diagonally,
And
and they can
it's
swoop. The flying guys can swoop, and it's like, it's like playing Geometry Wars with your guy. You get like, okay, I gotta get here. It's like playing Frogger.
Yeah, you have to like put the angles appropriately so you can actually hit them, because you can't direct. Like it's just straight where you're stabbing or magicking, and
yeah.
it's tricky.
Well, they're those spiky turtle shell looking things that are, you have to jump over them, or if they're up on the ledge, there's a couple of them where you have to time it and then jump on the ledge, but you have to jump and stab as you're falling, and do that like 4 times to kill that person.
You can kill them with magic.
I never use magic.
Well, I didn't until I found out that you could kill those guys with magic, because I was getting tired of jumping over them.
I think I was 6 or 7 hours into that game before I figured out how to use items.
Oh,
They don't tell you how to do anything.
No,
Well, they
and
don't.
I think
You have to learn
this
it
is
on
what
your
we
own.
take for granted as well. There's no screen that you can just go to controls and figure out which each control does, or
The story in
little-
that game is so thin. You walk in, and I don't even really understand what it is.
I don't
You
know.
stop
There's
at this
no story.
tower.
Well,
Or
you
their
go to
names.
you go to this town, and they're like, "Welcome back," or something like that. And then you go down in this like tunnel and talk to the guru, and he's like, "Okay, we got to kill the elves down below. They're raiding."
yeah, and then
And
remember
then,
your
like, you go
mantra.
down, and then you're just in the dungeon.
It was completely. And then what's up with the keys? With this
J.
key requires a jack, and this one needs a joker,
Yeah.
and then if you
Yeah.
use the key and walk in the door and back out, you have to go all the way back to town and buy another key.
Oh,
You
I
do.
know.
That was the annoying part. That's how I was trying to remember that mantra doesn't give you that stuff that you should have. So then
Yeah.
you have to go and grind to get money to pay for the stupid key again.
So
And I couldn't figure out the controls like right away and how to use the item, because I'm using it on like obviously my laptop, so I'm playing around with it. And all of a sudden I just hit it and it used the potion, and I was so excited. But then when I tried to replicate what I hit, I couldn't figure it out, because I just started hitting random buttons until something worked. It was
yeah, I think it's like
So
down
frustrating.
and B.
Are you
Yeah.
playing it on the PC, Eric?
Yes.
Oh, see, I'll be on the actual Nintendo system when I play.
See, that was one of those games that I saw the cartridge for at a local retro gaming dealer, and it was like $4, and I didn't pick it up, and I went back to get it, and it was gone.
Yeah.
But I'm at the part in that game where you have to use the elixir to revive all the springs, and I found 2 of them, and there's just this old guy that's standing up top, and he says something about you need to find 2 more of these, and he doesn't give you any idea of where they are.
Give me 2 seconds here, Eric. You guys chat a minute, and I'll be right back.
Oh, he's leaving us mid-show.
Oh, but I'm going to come back with something good.
Oh, who's
Just
this
give me a
guy?
second. Hold
Who
on.
is this?
serious. I bet he's making tea.
Did you make it to the? I guess they're not even really bosses in that game. They're just like bigger enemies that take up one whole screen. Did you make it to the first one?
No, I literally have not had a lot of time, so I made it right before then. Like I was
See,
in the corridor to get to him, I suppose.
I think I've come across 3 of those boss battles, I guess is what you want to call it.
Yeah.
And every one of them, you can just stand in one spot just where they can't hit you and just keep pressing the stab button and they eventually die. And those things spill out so much cash that it's worth it to just back out the screen and then come back in and they respawn and do it over and over and over and over again. Before you know it, you've got
Nice.
yourself just infinite amounts of gold and experience.
Nice.
But that's one of those loopholes that you kind of lose in modern gaming is how can you exploit the boss? Because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are some games that have that now, but
But I think that's true. And people started to kind of pick up on those too. If you stood in one spot, they couldn't quite reach you, or
yeah. And it wasn't every retro game that had that. I mean, I remember trying to exploit the system with Mega Man back in the day, and there was no way in hell that was happening.
yeah, it's interesting. But I like the game a lot. Like I've had fun playing it.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally went into it thinking, great, this is going to suck. 90% of NES games that you put into your system are going to be crap. Is he back?
Okay, I'm a failure. I cannot find my notebook now.
I was going to say, it's okay because your dog filled in for us for a little bit.
Yeah,
Oh, that's good. He's
we're
got a lot
having
to say.
conversations.
No, we were talking about how you can exploit those flying boss battles by just standing at the door and
Oh yeah, and just shooting. Yeah.
walk back out the screen, come back in, you get yourself infinite money. But I
Yep.
was going to tell you the one part that bugged the piss out of me was I got the winged shoes, which only last for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So you fly up, and if you don't get all the way up to that top spring, which they give you just enough time to get there, you have to go all the way back to town, spend another $3,000, and you may not even make it up there to light the spring. But
Right.
I cannot find that third spring.
I know I have it on the map. That's what I was trying to find, but like I said, I'm doing some rearranging, and I'm pretty sure it's
Somewhere.
I probably put it downstairs in the room already.
So
So
I guess in perspective, how far are we in that game? At least me. Not far at all.
you're pretty far actually when you get to those springs. That's like at least 3/4 of the way, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you've already got 10 hours into it,
Yeah, something like
give or
that.
take. Yeah, I think you're. I remember the springs being kind of near the end. Like, well, for example, the last time when I beat the game, I believe it was 1988.
So a year after it came out.
Yeah,
I was 2.
and it took a long time to beat it. I'm trying to remember if I was. I know I was out of my body cast at that point when I started playing. I just can't remember if I had moved to Minnesota yet. So I'm pretty sure it was like 88 that I beat the game, and we spent the summer playing it and to beat it. So
That's definitely one of those games that I want to try to add to my collection. I've dangerously gotten myself back into collecting again because I've made excessive trips to this local store. I went through a pretty rough phase when I first met Ben. Speaking of which, I think he's ditching us for good. Which is
he keeps coming up with lame, plausible excuses.
oh yeah, I don't have a computer.
That was the excuse?
I think there's something along those lines.
I don't know if my mic works.
I don't have a charger for my laptop.
To be fair though, guys, for the gamers out there, he's probably just playing Borderlands 2. That's
I would not doubt it. But no,
Probably.
Faxanadu is definitely a fantastic suggestion. I know a lot of people.
And I'm glad you guys found it and started to play it because it is one of my all-time favorite childhood games. Like
I'd seen
from
it
the
before,
Nintendo
but
system.
just never really bothered to give it the
Nobody's
time of
ever
day.
heard about it. When I bring it up, like, what is that?
Well, it's
Never
kind of
heard
a
of that game.
it's kind of a dumb name.
It kind of
And
is.
the monsters are named ridiculous. I'm not even going to try to pronounce them because we all
And
know.
I don't know if it was an originally a Japanese game they brought over and they just made up names and the Americanized names or not. I don't know the history of the game, so
The only thing that I noticed about that game that every time I play it just makes me chuckle is it looks like everybody in that game is jacking off.
I haven't noticed that. I'm gonna
Next
have
time
to,
you go, next time you go into the chapel and the clergyman is standing up there wanting to tell you something, just look at his hand. It looks like he's just pounding out some knuckle children. And go into.
And that is an expression I've never heard before either.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day.
Oh my goodness. I'm so much more intelligent today.
Yeah, everybody that you talk to, I mean, maybe not everybody. The guy that's sitting in his hut with his wife, clearly he's just waiting for nighttime to roll around. But the
You
guy,
never know though.
yeah, just an observation.
And to kind of bring up another topic here that we were going to bring up today is you guys are on the emulator,
Yes,
on the PC, and I guess I've tried using emulators before. I'm not a big fan.
Well, here's the issue with
Personally.
it, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people before. So, retro gaming or retro consoles and games are becoming harder and harder to find. PS2 you can still find in stores occasionally. Xbox is pretty much out. GameCube's out. But you talk about NES, Dreamcast, Super Nintendo, Atari, ColecoVision, Sega Saturn, anything like that. You cannot get it new anymore. There is no way to get it new. So
You can, but at the same time, I think it depends on the type of emulator, because there are the companies out there that sell the machines themselves, but then so have the controllers that go with the machines that you can hook up to your TV.
yeah, but those are
play that
those
way.
again are third-party knockoffs. I'm talking like where you pay the distributor, pay the store for your money, and that money goes to
Well,
the creator of the game.
And I
Yeah.
have that, but the emulators that you're doing is the same thing as what I mean. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not giving that person any money.
Yeah, so here comes. I guess this kind of brings up a good point that I've talked about with a lot of different people, is that modern day consoles are very prone to piracy. You know, you go onto torrent sites and a lot of people download the new games and burn them to their disc. And I have an issue with that because they could go to the store and purchase it new and support the developer. Whereas modern gaming now, or retro gaming now, you can't. And you can't always find a copy of that game that you really, really want to play. Like Yoshi's Island 2 or Super Mario RPG. Those games are incredibly hard to come by. Earthbound, Chrono Trigger. So
Right.
does the rarity of those games and I guess the consoles as well warrant using an emulator? Because isn't an emulator technically pirating?
Yes, and I think, in my feeling, I think once the company stops supporting that game or having support, because if you go out and buy an old version of the game and put it into your system and it doesn't work, you have no one to turn to, right?
Yeah.
So they're not supporting it. So I think that emulators would be quite fine for that, because it's not like they're putting any money into that development anymore, that trying to keep it going or anything. So that's what I think. And I think it would be considered piracy if we're looking at it from a technical standpoint.
Well, yeah, because I know that in a lot of those emulation websites, there's that disclaimer that says, in order to use this ROM, you must own a physical copy of this game. And for as ridiculously huge as my retro collection is, there's a vast majority of the ROMs that, yes, I do actually own copies of the games, and I would just much rather prefer to play them on my computer or my other consoles that support homebrew stuff. But I think you're right. Looking at it from a technical aspect, it is piracy, but is there a little bit of a gray area there where it's going to be okay? Like if the FBI broke down your door and said, like, let us see your computer, and they find thousands of ROMs on there, are they going to prosecute you?
Well, I think it's also the year. I think there's a law that if it's over a certain age, then it bypasses the piracy law, which is why the Nintendo ROMs and some of the Super Nintendo ROMs are okay.
But if you go onto those
can't find
sites,
them.
it's still really hard to find the first-party Nintendo ROMs. Like you have to do some serious digging to find Super Mario World, Super Mario All-Stars, Mario RPG, like any of those first-party titles. They are very strict on.
Right.
Because I guess technically those are available through something like the Wii Virtual Console, and I know that emulation is starting to move more towards PS1 and PS2 games, and PlayStation Network offers that stuff as a downloadable.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if you don't have a different avenue to download it, is that okay?
Yeah. I don't know. Just don't get caught, I guess, right?
I suppose that's a good way to look at it. But
but to me, like it's about the game. Like I'd rather get the machine because then the ones that you can buy like in the store that are legit, that kind of recuration of the emulators, and they come with all the ROMs for them.
Yeah.
And you get the actual controller, so like you'll have a different sets of controllers for them, like you with the Sega or Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
I think those are the people who they bought permission to do that, for those machines.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
you
true.
don't worry about the piracy, but also you get to use the controller the way it was. You play the game the way it was meant to be played, like Jessica said with the Faxanadu. She's hitting buttons all over the keyboard trying to
Oh
find
God,
out what
yeah,
works.
well,
And I tried to play that too with some of those older games, and I just don't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather use the controller or my hand.
Yeah.
That's me personally. Whereas some of the younger folks out there that are getting into emulators, they can sit down, pick up the keyboard, and it's like,
Well, I think a lot of those people too,
it.
the emulators do support controller plugins, and there are controllers that plug into your PC via USB that are identical to NES controllers and stuff like that. But
and I like the use of the NES controllers, or the replicas of them, because it does bring back the nostalgic aspect of it as well.
I'm kind of with Aaron though on if it's possible, get the original machine with the original controller. And I'm fortunate enough to live in a huge city that's got a lot of outlets for retro gaming, where this one store that I go to has literally thousands of NES titles and Super Nintendo and thousands of NES stuff. So I mean, chances are if there's a popular game that I want to play, I'll go there and they'll have it, and I've got the machines to run it. Because with emulators, I always find myself cheating because you can do a save state, and it just takes a picture of where you are right then and there. So with Faxanadu, that's kind of what I've been doing. I get to a point like I'm done, and I'll just save state it, and then I can come back to exactly where I am.
See, so that's how you're able to play that without for 7 hours.
Yeah,
and, not have to worry.
And it kind of sucks. I mean, I feel like I'm gypping myself out of the nostalgic value of the title and really experiencing it for what it is.
But at the same time, no, you can speed up the process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you necessarily? That's why I have a hard time going. Like if they remade Final Fantasy VII, for example, I'm not necessarily sure I would play it, other than to see the cutscenes again, because I don't want to sit there and grind for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
That's a typical RPG, though. I mean, you know that if they remade it, they would incorporate some sort of autosave system.
Right, I would hope so. I just can't, I just don't have the time anymore. You know what I mean? I just don't have the patience to sit there. And it seemed like when I was in school, I had all the time in the world, but now I have to pay bills and stuff. Yeah,
one of my favorite series, the Mega Man series, I originally went through growing up, played through all the games, beat them on their original platform, and now whenever I go back to play them, I play them on an emulator because I can get to the final boss with full health and an extra guy, and then I'll save state. That way, if I die, I don't have to go back through the level again. And it kind of sucks because it's cheating. But then again, since I grew up with those games, I have all these really fond memories of it. So for me, it's just a shorter, more abbreviated version of reliving the nostalgic value without all the shitty frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point, too. Like, I kind of feel like I don't want to be the grouchy old person, even just kind of relating it to, like, math with calculators. Like, when I had calculators in math class, people would say, like, oh, back in the day we had to count beats or whatever the hell they did. And that's kind of similar to what we're doing now, is that, yeah, back in the day we had it hard. It was rougher. You didn't have those save states that you could just go back and kind of redo that and give yourself a little safety net. But if we have the technology available to us now, why not use it? And if it helps people become introduced to these titles that they wouldn't play normally, then I think I'm all for that.
I think, though, I agree with that, because then they can kind of incorporate a little bit of modern technology into the old games to make sure that they meet somewhere in the middle and everybody's happy. But I think if they want to truly appreciate the roots of gaming, don't cheat and use those save states, or get the actual system and experience it for what it was meant to be.
Right. I'd agree with that. I mean, emulators are good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but nothing like playing it the way it was meant to be played.
Yeah,
I guess it's the experience that you want to take from it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Faxanadu is one of those games that I'm going to have to track down. My NES collection is...
I got 2 of them, man.
You got 2?
One for you. Yeah, I got one. Somebody got me one. They found me one, and then they found me one that was in the packaging.
Oof.
That he bought for me.
Is it like factory sealed?
Nah, it wasn't factory sealed anymore, but I still got everything in there. Like everything that came with it is in there.
Wow.
So I think I haven't even opened that one yet. I just did the other one.
Well,
so.
that's kind of an important thing to have.
Yeah.
Old
Well, I
NES
really
games
wish
in
I had.
box.
Yeah, I really wish I had the Final Fantasy stuff. I finally found my map for it, like all the monsters and the map on the one side,
Yeah.
but I can't find the book anymore.
What's really depressing is when I moved out of my parents' house, I went through a lot of my stuff and I found a lot of really old Super Nintendo, N64, and NES boxes in my closet, like crunched up and ripped and like old, and like this sucks. I wish these would have been in better shape.
Right.
You know, I've only got a couple of those old games that, I mean, for God's sakes, they're selling games in cardboard boxes. You can't really expect that stuff to hold up.
Right. Well, maybe we should save some of that for next time.
Well, did you guys play anything else this week? I mean, I know Jess was busy.
Faxanadu and thesis writing.
And Aaron played approximately nothing.
Well, I did play some Skyrim, but I didn't have to dig that out of the room and find a TV to hook it up to. And I played for about maybe 2 hours. So
I picked up Final Fantasy 3 or 6 if you want to be an elitist about it.
that's a good one. I like Final
That's one of those games that I never beat because I got either I got sidetracked or I got to a really stupid part in the game that now that I've gotten past it, I don't understand how I couldn't figure it out. But
right.
We can talk about that on a later show.
But I think we have some questions.
Oh, we got
to
some.
answer.
Actually, we got some really good emails. I'm impressed with the quality of emails that people are sending in. This one's kind of a two-parter. I mean, two people asked us the same question, so I'm going to kind of.
Did we get 10 emails?
We didn't get 10. I think we got 4.
Okay.
All right, we got one from Connor here. He says, "Hey, what is going on, FSP crew? We've been acronymized, if that's what you want to call it. I started out my video game love on Rayman 2 for PS1. I remember so vividly the eerie soundtrack and sound effects of that game, but that made the memories of my countless hours collecting Ulms throughout my childhood stick. So this leads me to my question. What soundtracks from your childhood game collection really stood out to you? Old 8-bit sounds are fair game. Love the new show, Connor."
I like how you read that.
You like that?
Yeah.
That's my
I feel
teacher
like you
voice.
both have like radio voices. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you.
Oh.
Sorry to sidetrack that.
I can make it worse if you'd like.
No, I can't do it. I just tried. No.
I'll make it deeper for you next time, Jessica.
I was a bass 2.
I'm going to have to practice.
Yeah. Well, Jessica, why don't you answer this one first? Let's go with you.
I have to say, like, what really gets me super excited is any kind of Zelda song. That, I think, really sticks out to me.
Like the main the Hyrule theme or title theme or just anything?
Hyrule and, like, Zelda's Lullaby, like, not super old, but that one, I just get so excited when I hear it.
I've been playing through the Ocarina of Time 3D, and I played the original Ocarina of Time when it came out, and like for some reason that game is just super ingrained in my mind. And when I
love that game.
Yeah, it's one of those where when I'm sitting there and playing it now, I still have all the Ocarina tunes memorized, and occasionally I'll just be walking around and I'll start humming those tunes.
Some good ones. I think soundtrack-wise, I would go with Final Fantasy VIII. I absolutely love that soundtrack.
I was going to say the menu cursor from Final Fantasy VII, and then
that's pretty good.
The soundtrack from 8. I don't know what it is about 8, but like whenever I sit down to do any writing or do like grading papers, I'll throw on the soundtrack from 8 and just kind of zone out.
So good. They did so good. Which Final Fantasy had Rosa in it? Do you remember?
Rosa?
With the opera scene? Maybe I named her Rosa. Maybe I changed her name.
Are you talking like the one with?
It was 2 or 3, or
I think that was
4 or 6.
I think that was a. You know what? I'm not even going to guess because those early games are really goofy. I think it's.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but there was one where there was opera singing and she sang, and that was part of the deal. You had to like pick the words for her and everything.
I think
that
was
a really good one too.
Or not 2. I think it was 4.
2.
It was 4.
So 3.
Let me see. I've got my Final Fantasy strategy guides here. I can look in the.
Yeah.
Her name was Rosa.
Rosa, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, right here, Final Fantasy 4.
Yeah. So that was number 2.
I don't.
2 on the SNES. It was 2. Final Fantasy 2.
Could have been.
Yeah, 'cause that was 4. Because then 6 was 3. Because 5 never came to the United States.
No, it did on the Game Boy Advance.
It did, yeah. So anyway,
I think
beyond that point, that would be mine.
I think for me, like childhood wise, one of the first RPGs obviously that I played was Final Fantasy, but that music didn't really stick with me as much as the entire soundtrack from Illusion of Gaia. I have no idea why, but I just have really vivid memories of like even going to Kmart to buy that game. I'd saved up $40 and I had it in my Mickey Mouse wallet. We were walking back to the electronics and I got it out of the case and we were walking back up to the register and I put the game up there and I put my money on it and I only had 120. And I was like devastated because one of my 20s had fallen out between the electronics department and the cash register. So we retraced my steps exactly and didn't find it. So I was shattered because I wanted this game. I don't know why I wanted it. I'd never seen any of my friends play it, never heard about it, never read anything. I just saw it and like I was mesmerized by the cover and like I have to own that game. So my mom, we didn't have a lot of money by any means, but my mom pitched forward. She's like, "Here you go, you can get this." And like that night I just sat and vegged out on that game. And for some reason, just the tunes from all the different towns. I think that's my favorite part of role-playing games is going to the different towns and hearing the different themes that each town has. And every one of those just stuck with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want some good music, listen to some Illusion of Gaia.
All right, I might have to do that.
All right, we've got another question here from Kiefer. Hey there, Factory Sealed crew. For my first email to the show, I have 2 questions. First, what is your favorite retro platformer game? Next, what is your favorite soundtrack? We already covered that. Also, I want to recommend a retro game that you should all play if you haven't. Deus Ex 1 is an amazing stealth FPS on PS2 and PC, blah, blah, blah. Thanks, Kiefer.
Wow. Way to read that.
I gave you the abridged version.
Yes. Actually, I remember selling Deus Ex 1 on the PC back in the day, and it was a pretty good game.
I remember playing the first one on PS2. I don't know if that was the same thing.
I think they were different. I believe they were 2 different... I could be totally wrong on this because I never played the PS2 version of it, but I thought the PS2 version was a completely different game than the PC version.
I'm going to have to go back and get the PC version then because I skipped out on Human Revolution. But favorite retro platformer?
Oh, man. I'm going to...
There's so many.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
I think the obvious choice is something like Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that holds Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World. I mean, those are obvious choices, but boy, if you're going to come up with something like just completely unique,
I'd have to. It's a different. It's not a side-scrolling platformer, but I'd almost have to go with one of the Tomb Raiders.
I would still count that. Well, yeah, I'd count that as like an action platformer.
Yeah, it's an action platformer. I would have to say for me, probably it'd be the Tomb Raider games.
I love Which Tomb Raider was it? Where at the end she got the snowmobile and you had to jump across this big cliff, and I would always make her
3.
I'd always make her jump off to her death, just like listen to the bones crack.
I feel like I'm not surprised at all.
No, he shouldn't be.
No, he's a very violent player.
Seriously, I can't be a violent game player. Like I can't do bad things to people. I feel horrible if I'm made to kill someone and I don't need to.
Right.
We would not get along in a video game world.
We don't.
He also talks about Donkey Kong Country 2.
Yes.
Oh, that's what he said is his favorite. Okay, I'm reading it now too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, but
I don't know.
Donkey Kong Country 2 is a fantastic game. That was like revolutionary
I never really,
on the PS2.
I never really drank the whole Donkey Kong Country Kool-Aid. I liked it. It was cool, but I played the Donkey Kong Country Returns that just came out on the Wii last year, and like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you not liking it that much.
It was okay. I mean, there was some cool stuff that they did, but it just kind of reminded me why I didn't care for Donkey Kong Country. It's not bad. It's just, I don't know.
It's a tough one. It's one of those other really tough ones. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It had it.
I really like Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
Oh, that's
If you want one where you have to get through the entire game with one guy, that one's super hard. Did you know that once you beat the game, technically it's not over, that's the halfway point. You have to start over and beat the game again in one sitting in order to get the real ending of the game?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never beaten it, so no thanks. All right, next question we got from Jack, aka Zapper12. He says, "Hey Eric, Jess, Aaron, I was think about getting." I'm just reading this verbatim.
Maybe do some little mental editing.
Okay, Aaron, you can do this one.
Let me do it. I'm going to give it a nice accent too. I apologize, Jack, but I'm going to do it. I was think about getting into retro games like Secret of Mana and Final Fantasy III on the SNES. And I was wondering if there are any other games you could recommend for the system. Also, do you know anywhere I could find a SNES for a good price? I was pulling off space right there, like the guy selling magazines.
I got you.
I kind of got off topic at first, but
I would say if you're looking at getting a Super Nintendo, first of all, check Amazon, check eBay. You can get them super cheap. But Secret of Mana, yeah, Final Fantasy 3, yeah, but if you want some good early RPGs, Illusion of Gaia, check out Super Mario RPG, Soul Blazer. Soul Blazer kind of ties in with Illusion of Gaia, Chrono Trigger, stuff like that. But I think he's not only sticking to RPGs. What other just good games?
Well, for the SNES, get the F-Zero games.
Oh yeah,
for sure. The F-Zero.
Frustration in a silver cartridge, right there.
Yeah, you also need to get your hands on Pilot Wings. That is a hands down.
See, I'm going to disagree with you on that.
No, that's a hands down must-have game for the SNES.
Pilot Wings on the Super Nintendo was crap.
I don't think so.
It was okay. I thought that the base jumping, the
we'll
parachuting was fun because you could slam into the ground, and that was about it.
Yeah, maybe but you don't like Red Dead, so.
I don't like Red Dead, so you're done with your opinions.
Maybe I was just really bad at it. That's why I didn't like it.
You could be. That might be why you're not very good at Red Dead. You can't kill horse thieves.
I can kill the horses.
He kills the horses.
Yeah.
But for the SNES, like, mom and pop shops are usually pretty good too. So then, at least like you're buying local as well.
Test it before you buy it, though. I mean, those things.
Yeah.
I think I've got like 3 or 4 of them laying around. Luckily, they all still work, but a little hydrogen peroxide and a Q-tip will work wonders.
And here's a little secret. Here's a little secret for you. If you happen to get your hands on a U.S. Super Nintendo, and you get some Japanese games like Super Street Fighter 3, you can actually just take a screwdriver and a hammer to the inside where you put the cartridge in. There's 2 little gray knobs. You can bust those out, and then you'll be able to put the Japanese cartridges in your SNES.
Good call.
So, mutilate your cartridge.
Not the cartridge.
You could be system. Rough on your systems back then, and it wasn't
a big deal. You could
drop
it off a cliff, and it'd still play.
I used to keep my Super Nintendos out pretty regularly back when I lived in college, and I had a sword in my dorm room. It was just a replica metal sword. I mean, it was heavy. And one of my buddies was playing around with it, and he was sitting on the chair, and he lost it out of his hands, and it fell forward and like cut into the Nintendo or Super Nintendo, like big, huge crack in the middle of it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I hit reset, and the thing fired right up. Right. I mean, those things could take an absolute whooping.
Well, like my NES, I had to, whenever we wanted to play it, towards the end of its life, you had to like hit the power on, and then you had to bang it 3 or 4 times on the side, like really rough. And then turn it off, and then turn it back on, and it would work. And then if that didn't work, it was a whole blow on the cartridge thing. But
the thing is, you knew the routine.
Oh, yes.
It's like, I've hit it 3 times, I have to hit it once more, spin it in a circle, cram some mashed potatoes in my pocket, call grandma, and then it'll work.
It's true.
And it works.
Mashed potatoes were the most important part.
All right, we got a couple more questions here. Next one is from David Rodriguez. Says, hey guys, I was wondering if the 8-bit graphics ever bother you. Is it hard to go back to Final Fantasy VIII just after you played Skyrim, for example? Keep up the good work. Well, technically speaking, 8-bit graphics are not Final Fantasy VIII. 8-bit graphics are back to NES, but that's splitting hairs. I'm going to have
Either way, it is they do and they don't bother me.
I don't think they bother me at all, and maybe that's just because...
No.
Actually, you know
I
what?
prefer the 8-bit actually over some of the... I almost prefer the 8-bit over the polygons from Final Fantasy VIII.
I was going to say there are some really rough N64 and PlayStation games that I really enjoyed, like the old Crash Bandicoot games. Love those games, but going back to play them now is rough. Or trying to... Even something like Shadow of the Colossus. Because it's just like we're used to stuff that's so crisp and clear,
right? And the nice thing about the 8-bit and even the 16-bit was it is what it is. It's not trying to be 3-dimensional or anything. It's just a flat surface. And the PS1 and the PS2, I have a hard time going back to play those than I do the older systems because it's just so blocky.
Yeah,
I played like a Scott Pilgrim, downloaded from like PSN. And it was funny because I was like, this is stupid. Because I don't know, like I like the 8-bit and I have no problem with that. But then when I was playing a new game that was
trying to
pretending
replicate
to be, I was like, no.
But then look at what Capcom did with Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10. Those were new games that were just made specifically for the downloadable content, but they made them exactly as if they were going to be released on an 8-bit console, like complete with screen flicker and tearing and stuff like that. So I think if they want to make a retro game, make it in the true vein of retro and not pretty it up.
That's true.
But I guess to answer his question, no, it doesn't bother me at all because I just flip back into childhood mode and love it all over again. Let's see. Last question. Eric, Jess, Aaron, and others. I don't know who others are this time.
The dog.
Loving the show so far. So my question is, what is your guys and girl favorite retro PC game? Mine personally is Jill of the Jungle and the original Duke Nukem. These are my two favorite games on my parents' DOS-only computer. Hard to figure out when you're only 3 or 4 at the time, but these have ended up being my most memorable times as a young kid. Really want to hear your faves. Thanks, Zanzil.
See, I used to have Post-it notes on the computer monitor that would have the commands that I would type to get up my games and stuff like that.
Oh, jeez.
I remember DOS.
DOS was rough.
I remember DOS games.
Yeah.
I think the first one that I played was... The first game I remember playing on a computer was with my dad on our old Apple G2. It was Armor Alley. You guys remember that game?
I've never played that one.
You were this helicopter, and you had to fly across the screen, pick up troops, and bring them back to your base.
I do remember that game.
All while trying to be shot down by enemy helicopters, and it was super fun. I just remember obsessing about that at school and coming home and playing it with my dad for hours.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But I think growing up and like true PC gaming, the original Baldur's Gate, hands down.
Oh, I have a funny story about that game, if you don't mind.
Oh, please tell.
You're not, unless you played D&D, it's not that funny, I guess.
Oh, I know plenty of people that have played D&D.
I've just started playing.
Oh, you rock. And I started playing for, first ed, second ed, the advanced engine, and then I didn't play for a long time. And then 3.0 came out, and I started playing 3.0 with some buddies, and I'd played it for a long time. And then the Baldur's Gate game came out, but they still used the second edition of rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they used THAC0 in that one to hit AC 0. So you wanted a low AC in 2.5. So I'm running around this whole game, get about halfway through, and I wouldn't wear any armor because it kept giving me a high armor class, or a low armor class. And I was like, I have like a 30 armor class wearing nothing. So I'm just going to run around wearing nothing.
Good old Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, and then I realized that it was 2.5 rules, and I was like, oh, I guess I will wear this stuff. That makes this game so much easier. I couldn't understand why I kept getting hit.
I wish I could get that. I wish I had that on Steam. I'd love to go back and play those.
But yeah, and then I think my favorite game was on PC is Gabriel Knight. That's my most memorable.
Gabriel Knight?
Gabriel Knight. The Sierra team made them all. These Gabriel Knight, and then also like the King's Quest.
King's Quest is good.
Yeah, Gabriel Knight was made by Sierra Till, and it was a little hit. It had Tim Curry as the voice actor,
Oh, I love
which was
him.
phenomenal. The whole game was phenomenal. It was like a point-and-click adventure type game, kind of similar to the King's Quest games in those early on years, where you had to like find a clue, hit that, talk to this person, things like that. I still have it, but I can't get it to play on my Windows, so I'm kind of disappointed.
Gonna have to boot up the old Windows 95.
Right.
God. All right. Well,
I love or did you guys ever play Doom?
yes.
Yes, Doom.
See, that was my favorite, but that was a game that I could only play like during the day with the lights on and all the doors open and checking the closets for Boogeyman. That one scared me.
My question for everybody to answer for me is, there was a game on the PC around the 93, 92 area there where you played, I think it might have been a Missile Command or something, but you had these little things where you could set up your little tanks or your little spots, and they all had different colors, and you would just shoot. You had to like figure out the geometry of like how to hit that. And I'm just trying to find it, and I cannot remember the name
you'd fire
of the
cannon,
game.
and like it would erode the ground underneath them, and you'd try to hit them, but otherwise you could get them to fall up. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that game.
It was just called Tanks.
Was it called Tanks?
I have no idea. I'm just making
I don't know.
up.
But if you guys know out there, please let me know, because I really want to play it again.
What about,
I don't know what it's called.
What about Descent? Did you guys ever play that?
I sucked at that game.
That game was terribly hard. It was one of the first 3D flying games that I really came across. It was, I think we got our brand new Compaq in the mid-90s, and it had Windows on it, this new fascinating operating system. And it had Descent installed on it, so we were playing that.
Yeah,
and
it was a free one. I kept dying all the time.
Funny story is that Descent went on to have 2 sequels, and then the 4th one actually got scrapped and then repurposed into what is currently Red Faction.
Huh.
Bet you didn't know that.
I didn't.
Did not.
If you play through the first Red Faction, you can pick up, I mean, even a lot of the art style harkens back to Descent, but there's a lot of storyline that kind of hints at that it was a Descent game originally, because a lot of that stuff was already developed and just got left in. So, little tidbit trivia to end on there. So,
all right.
if you want to send us an email, factorysealed@manatank.com. Also, we are now on iTunes. I don't know if you guys saw that, but we're hot and heavy on iTunes. So if you're feeling
moving up in the world,
if you're feeling charitable, pop on over and rate and review us, because it makes us feel good at night. At least me.
I like hearing the feedback. It's probably my favorite thing about doing this podcast is getting the people to come back and the correcting me too, the corrections, the ones that, because we're all coming from memory, so having somebody do like a fact check for us is awesome.
Oh yeah, like that control scheme I was talking about last week that I played with on Red Faction. Apparently that still exists, and it's called something like Legacy Southpaw.
Right.
Crazy.
That's really cool. So
yeah, we've got some good fans out there that if you want us to talk about anything or hear our opinions on it, shoot us a question. If you want us to play anything, maybe one of your favorite games from when you were a kid, we'll do our best to play as much of it as we can, and then we'll either praise it or tear it apart.
And I am hooking up my Nintendo tomorrow, I promise.
Nice. All right, Aaron, where can we find you on the Twitters?
At Aaron Robison, ARONROBISON.
God, we still got to come up with something easier. Johnny Applebasket. Jess.
Jessica Megan, JESSCAMEGAN. Spelled my own name wrong.
Well, you didn't even spell it properly on Twitter. You forgot the I.
No, I did that on purpose.
That's why she likes Mario.
Oh, Mario.
I do.
Mario.
And I
didn't even say it tonight.
You can follow me at HonestPizza. That's going to do it for this bi-weekly. Should we keep it bi-weekly, or do we want to move up to weekly?
How about we get some comments on that too?
Yeah, let's get some comments.
Tell us what you want to hear. I don't have an issue doing it.
I'm thinking we may have to switch weeks, though.
Yeah.
I think we might have to switch, and so we might have one back-to-back at one point, because we'll have to get back on a different schedule. But I think the opposite weeks that we're not doing it now would work better.
Well, tell us what you want to hear. That is going to do it for us today.
Awesome.
Tonight.
7:20 is still daytime.
It's 9:22 where I'm at.
Oh, God.
Jeez.
We're ahead of you. We're in the future.
It's like time travel.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, thanks, guys. It's been fun. We will see you guys next week or 2 weeks. I have no idea.
Whenever we get around to recording again.
Right.
Peace out. I just said that.